I think we've got a stellar video for you today. We're going to be taking a look at the eye cooler Jungle Leopard Interstellar V2. So I hope you'll tune in and join me for this RGB fan. And before we get into it, I'd like to thank Eye Cooler and Jungle Leopard for being awesome and sending me this review sample. No money exchange hands. They just like the way I review products and wanted to share it with all of you. So let's get into it. First up is a little bit of spec. I found some contradicting information online, so it's kind of hard to figure out exactly which it is. So it either spins at 2000 or 1850 RPM. The CFM rating was all over the place. The static pressure was all over the place. So we're going to see how it compares to other fans and make our judgment call that way, rather than taking a look at a spec sheet. But it is $11 for 3 fans, so this does fit nicely into an extreme budget category fan, at least pre-tariffs. So please do pay attention to updated pricing, as that is subject to change. Alright, now let's take a closer look at the Interstellar V2 block fan. It's got RGB mirrors. They look pretty good, taking off that peel. It's just plastic there. It's fine, just what you'd expect. Frame is pretty lightweight. It's got an infinity mirror in the middle, which I like infinity mirrors. I think they look pretty awesome. I'm not a huge fan of like blade illumination, but I do love the infinity mirror appearance. And it's just awesome looking. I'm not going to lie. Are there better implementations that look better? I would prefer it without this and maybe a blade illumination and then that. But that's, this is where it's personal opinion. You get to choose whether or not you like the visual appearance or not. It certainly kicks off plenty of light. It's spinning at low RPM, so I'm not too concerned sticking my finger in there. The back strut is nice and narrow, but unfortunately they didn't integrate the wire into the strut, so it's causing extra blocking of airflow around it. It just could be implemented a little bit better to help improve airflow. The struts do have a triangular shape, which helps deflect airflow around them. Even this one has a little bit of shape to it, but except for this part where the cable is, where it is completely flat. The back of it doesn't look too bad because of the illumination, but it's a normal direction fan, so the back is the worst looking part of it. The frame of it is oversized. Putting it in my 120 to 140 adapter, it would not fit my Noctool one, so I had to use a different adapter. And yeah, so depending on your case design, it may not fit. Like the hole spacing is spot on. That's not a concern. It's the extra frame out here around the edges where it won't fit. Also, because of that extra thick frame where it extends into the fan blades, the blades do look a little bit on the small side for standard 120mm class fans. But that's just something I've seen with other fans that have this sort of polycarbonate infinity mirror on the sides, where it just takes up extra room and you have to give up something, otherwise the fan frame gets too much bigger. It's significant enough that the Noctool adapter didn't fit, but wouldn't be significant enough for many other things unless you have a really, really, really compact case. I just really want to reiterate that. So 99% of the time it's not really going to be a problem. The blade design is more of a pressure-oriented thing. They do overlap quite a bit, and the distance between the blade and the housing isn't too bad. I surprised myself getting my finger in there. Not that it hurt. Doo-doo. But yeah, overall, I think this is an appearance-first fan, which isn't a bad thing. You just have to take that with a grain of salt. In terms of LED RGBs in the middle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 8, which is a pretty good number. They're not too visible from the back, which is good. And this fan features a pogo pen type. No, they're not pogo pens. They're like the sliding module. So there are these actual little, they're these little pegs, and they fit into slots, and it just kind of slides and locks into place, and boom, you get lighting, and you get PWM fan signal through that. So it's a cheaper solution than like those pogo contact pins and that kind of thing, but it gives the same sort of functionality, which I do like. First up in the testing is the case simulation test. This is most applicable for air coolers, so do think a front-to-back airflow type design in all of these, except for one special use case at the 6-inch mark, where you've got fans at the bottom of your computer case blowing up towards your GPU. That's where that 6-inch mark is extraordinarily applicable. So the 6-inch mark is also in ultra-compact ITX cases that would still be more or less open airflow in design. A few exist, I forget the model numbers of them. but would be blowing directly into your air cooler. The 9-inch mark would be something like a media center PC, so think something that would hold 220mm, maybe 240mm class fans, and giving you that front-to-back airflow there. Then the 11-inch mark, your standard mid-towers, something that would hold 320s or 360 IAO would be very applicable here. And then at the 14.5-inch mark, you got truly large towers, so 340mm class fans. So as we're going through this case simulation testing, do pay attention to what size computer case you actually plan on building into for the data point section you care most about. So if you're building a large tower, you're not going to be looking at, well, smaller categories. So how does this fan compare against my control fan? Well, the control fan is 3 parts X25 to 1 part A14, and the Interstellar is got a very odd flow pattern. So it stayed fairly flat from the 6 to the 9, but then it seemed to drop off very steeply at the 11 and then kind of leveled out and met my control fan at the end. So I feel like it's the airflow pattern coming out the back is just not incredibly consistent, meaning a smooth airflow. So it may average out to these numbers, but it just doesn't create a smooth airflow, so there may be extra turbulence in it. Going up to 100% feet on fan signal, it smooths itself out. That is good, but you shouldn't be running your case fans at 100%. And it's just a bit below my control fan. Comparing against other fans, well, against other Jungle Leopard Interstellars, it's significantly better than them. But compared to my better fans, it is sitting on the lower end of what I consider a good case airflow fan, where a lot of these are sitting in that category. So take that as you will. At the 10.5 decibel mark. Taking a look at the same thing, except this time in bar graph form, it's sitting well towards the bottom. Moving up to my 17.5 decibel mark reading, and it is sitting towards the bottom, except for at the 14.5-inch mark, where it levels out and creates a good, strong airflow. So in larger cases, it's actually pretty middle-of-the-road pack. But if you're looking at any of the smaller size cases, I would lean towards getting something that produces better airflow, unless it's this fan has an aesthetic you particularly like and are willing to have that compromise in its design. Same thing, bar graph form, we're going to move past it pretty quickly. At 100% pitot on fan signaling, well, here the fan is spinning at 1,900 RPM, so it's sitting right in between 1850 and 2,000. And it's creating a pretty solid amount of airflow given its RPM, especially compared to other fans around it. Again, at the 6 and the 9-inch marks, it's a bit on the weak side. By the 11-inch mark, it's pretty much in the middle of the pack, and 14.5, it's in the middle of the pack. So it creates a good airflow in bigger cases, but for smaller ones, I would lean towards a different fan. Locking into specific RPMs, and the Interstellar version 2 is towards the bottom of the graphs, moving up to 1,500 RPM. It is, once again, still towards the bottom of the graphs, and this is just because of the way I've chosen to average it using the 6, 11, and 14.5-inch marks, blend kind of averaging the result of those three values with compared to other fans, because I personally think that most people are going to be using these, either putting them in the floor of your case, blowing up towards your GPU, or from a front-to-back airflow type perspective, or of course as exhaust. Moving up to 2,000 RPM. It's not truly a 2,000 RPM fan, but it spins close enough that I'm putting in the equivalent category. Bottom middle does okay. Now we're taking a look at airspeed versus decibels, and it fits pretty squarely in the middle. It drops back a little bit as RPM and airspeed increase. The noise increases faster than the airspeed compared to some of the other fans I've tested, but I'd still put it in a okay type category here. Data is the same, except we're taking a look at the noise data in SON. So SON is just a different way of looking at noise. I have a whole piece of it on my channel if you're interested in learning about how SON is calculated. But there it is. Now we're taking a look at how this fan does through my CPU air cooler, the Noctua U12A Thick Boy air cooler. So the first graph here on the left side is airspeed versus RPM. It's a blade efficiency, and it sits right in line with my control fan, indicating that the blade design is fairly effective at forcing air through a cooler stack. Now on the right graph, we have airspeed versus decibels, so how noise efficient is this fan? And here is where the version 2 tends to fall back. It just isn't quite as noise efficient as my control fan. It may be acceptable for you, but from an empirical sense, it sits in a lower tier than what I would personally prefer. And thanks to viewers like you joining me as a Patreon and YouTube members, I was able to purchase a radiator. Unfortunately, I don't have a system with a custom water loop to hook it up to yet. So this test is not, I repeat that, saying that the U12A and the Nemesis radiator with a custom liquid loop would have the same cooling potential. They probably do not. What I am saying is that the difficulty, so how the resistance to airflow going through the fin stacks or the radiator are near on equivalent. That is what I'm saying in this test. So that's an important piece of information, that they are very similar, so it means that all data moving forward is fairly applicable between both types of devices. So I do have some basic thermal data. I'm not super happy with the way this is going testing, so I'm in the process of revising it even while I'm making videos, where I've increased my thermal load on my CPU from 150 watts to 165, which is the maximum that the cooler can handle with the set of conditions I have on it. The cooler is the Arctic Liquid Freezer 3. One fan is a locked RPM, and then the fan that I'm testing is adjustable. And basically the point of it is to get as close to thermal max on that on the CPU on that cooler as possible without causing any damage to my CPU. So now we're taking a closer look at this. The yellow is at 100% pitot fan signal, the red is at 17.5 decibels, and the blue is at 10.5 decibels. Better fans have lower temperatures, so it goes from worst to best as you're looking downward. And the Interstellar version 2 is one of the better fans I have tested so far using the version that I have up right now. I plan on retesting it at the 165. Again, just was not ready, well, in time. So overall, it's doing pretty okay. Now we're on to back to airspeeds going through these coolers. Interstellar version 2. The red is my 10.5 decibel mark, and the blue is the 17.5. And it's sitting pretty much in the middle of the pack, doing relatively okay, I would say. Sitting right behind the P12 and the General Typhoon, so that's a great company for it to sit in. Moving on to locked-in RPM, so at 800 RPM, this fan is not particularly efficient. Just sits well below the other fans. Mind its noise efficiency, so how much noise it generates, is actually pretty quiet. It just isn't moving enough air for that given noise level, and this is how it was calculated for the rankings. Moving up to 1,500 RPM, it's moving up in the stacks. Here's the new way the weighting factor was calculated. And it is significantly quieter than the fans around it while moving a similar amount of air. So overall, indicating that it's a fairly effective design, which is quite impressive. Moving up to 2,000 RPM, here the fan falls back in position. Now if we're taking a look at the fans around it, it's actually fairly noise efficient, but the problem lies in how much air it can deliver, and it's just not pushing enough air, unfortunately. Locking to 100% pitot fan signal, and at its given 1900 RPM, it is at the bottom of the pack. For coolers, being able to have a good fan at 100% is a little bit more important than as a case fan, because, well, CPUs get hot and you want to make sure that you're evacuating that air as quickly and effectively as possible. So the de facto A12X25 is sitting right here at 2.4 meters per second, so it's a bit of a far cry from that. Now we're taking a look at its noise efficiency versus air speed, and it starts off pretty good at lower decibels, but as the decibel pitot fan signal increase, it tends to fall behind the main grouping of fans. So it goes from being a pretty middle of the road to staying very middle of the road, maybe slightly under middle of the road, particularly at higher RPMs. So what I'm saying is there are better fans out there at the high end, but if you're sticking it on an AIO and you're not overloading it like crazy overclocking, it would do just fine. Same data, this time in zone. We already talked about it, different way of looking at data. And it's reiterating my point with regard to that it just sits a little bit lower than I would expect it to in noise level versus the airspeed. Now we're looking at my CFM testing. So CFM is just volumetric flow rate. And the first graph on the right side is CFM, so volumetric flow rate versus RPM, that efficiency. And it sits right in line with my control fan, which is just the A12X25. Once we take a look at the noise efficiency, well, at 20, 30, and 40% PWM fan signal, it is actually slightly better than my control fan. But as we increase that, past that, it gets significantly worse. So it just isn't meeting what my preference is for noise level in a fan. But that just because it doesn't meet mine doesn't mean it doesn't meet yours. So I'm just trying to provide you an informed decision here. Taking a look at a bar graph of noise efficiency. So the red is 10.5 and the blue is 17.5 decibels. So how does it rank? Well, bottom middle of the pack. So it's doing relatively okay. And if you're wondering why this reverse play is on here and it's got such a pathetic airspeed, it's because it had issues with the anemometer because reverse speed fans spin in the opposite direction and it caused the anemometer not to function properly. But for normal spinning fans, it does just fine. So I'm in the process of upgrading that testing for those particular fans. Locking into 100% PWM fan signal, the Interstellar is dead last. Now, most of the fans on here do spin above 2000 RPM. There is an 1884, and it does outperform this one. Mind, it's doing it quite a bit noisier. So this is the data point. Now for volumetric flow rate versus a decibel reading, it's sitting pretty much in the middle of the pack. It's not a particularly high performer. It's not a particularly low performer. It's just plugging along doing okay. And that brings us to the value proposition. So this is a $33 fan. So divided by 3 in the pack, meaning it's an $11 fan. So $33 for a triple pack. I think I may have misspoken at the beginning of this video and calling it $11 for 3. So ignore that. So this means it's a very cost-effective fan, particularly buying in triple packs. If you can buy a single pack and it's $11, then it's fine. It's equal to its price. But if you're spending more than that, then the value proposition doesn't really equate. Most of these fans were purchased as individuals, and buying them in packs is the cheapest way to purchase fans. So in terms of case fan value, pretty much in the middle of the pack. Not really a stellar value, but it could be worse. Volumetric flow rate performance, again, sitting right in the middle of the pack. Actually, this one it might be middle, but the high performance here do perform particularly well. And as a special note about this type of graph, where we're talking about value is just performance per dollar. So a fan that is cheap enough, as long as performance meets some kind of basic criteria, will look great on these graphs. Meanwhile, something that, well, let's use the A12X25 as an example. It is well regarded as one of the best fans ever made. Is ranked actually fairly low on this because it's just so expensive. So this graph doesn't take into account visual aesthetics, so that's RGB lighting or the fan appearance. It doesn't have to take into effect bearing design, so it only takes into account new out-of-the-box performance, and longevity is something that I cannot test at this time, and I'm going to talk about that at the very end of this video. And as far as how this fan does on a CPU air cooled, a little bit below the average mark in terms of the value, but still relatively okay. And that brings us to the TLDR for the Interstellar version 2. So for the CPU coolers, this is assuming that the cooler that you're going to slap onto your CPU is actually capable of cooling the CPU. Like, you're not going to put a single or a double heat pipe on a 14900K and expect it to cool it, no matter what fan you stick on there. So have some common sense here. So for low wattage CPUs, it's an average performer, but its value is not particularly great. For high wattage CPUs, its performance is average, and its value is average. For small compact cases, it is a good performer, its value is average. And for mid to large cases, it's a good performer with a value that is average. And that brings us to the raw data. The raw data does belong to me and my channel. If you want access to it, you need to subscribe as a Patreon and YouTube member in my 2 higher tiers. They gain access to versions of my raw data for you to use. I do ask that you not produce other videos, obviously, because it is my data. But for your own personal use, data collecting, you are more than welcome to do that. If you want to help support this channel, please think about becoming a Patreon or YouTube member or sending me a super. That does go directly into helping support this channel because it's privately funded right now. It's just me, myself, and whatever companies will send me free fans on occasion. So helping support this channel really does help it. And I know giving money to a random person on the internet, me making these videos, can be a hard thing to ask for. Everybody is in their own financial situation, especially with the world as it is. But if you can hit that subscribe button, it really does go a long way in helping my channel. And tell your friends, say, hey, I found this cool channel that reviews computer fans. I don't know. Anyways, all jokes aside, I'm here I've always had a passion for fans, and I'm an aerospace engineer, so you all get the benefit of watching these videos. And I hope you like the graphs. Anyways, thank you very much for watching here on Computer Tech and More. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.